Welcome to our Think Big series, brought to you by PSG. My name is Richard Seaton Rogers, Chief Information Officer for PSG. PSG is a leading financial services group with an extensive national footprint in South Africa and a presence in Namibia. We've been in operation since 1998. We pride ourselves in providing a bigger picture approach to our clients' financial needs, from asset and wealth management to short-term insurance. We offer clients an access to a wide range of insurance and investment products based on comprehensive advice. Our clients benefit from access to proprietary products and solutions, as well as a comprehensive list of third-party products. The Think Big series is a collection of dialogues with leading speakers, hosted by award-winning financial journalist Bruce Whitfield. We aim to bring our audiences independent insights that help them formulate their own opinions on some of the country's most pressing issues. Uncertainty and challenges continue to abound, but armed with knowledge, we are better equipped to chart the way forward. Today's webinar, Bruce speaks with Stafford Masie. Stafford has been in the IT industry for more than 25 years. He is responsible for establishing Google's presence in South Africa in 2006. He led their team in launching the African versions of Google Search, AdWords, Maps, and Street View, as well as the local version of YouTube. In other words, the South African Google business ecosystem and their strategy. After leaving Google in 2010, he founded several fintech businesses and has since established several technology startups that have expanded globally. Today's webinar is titled The Future of Remote Work. Remote work, as we know, is a hot topic. It's definitely been accelerated by COVID and the way the world has adjusted to this pandemic. So what lessons have South Africans learned over the past year, and how can businesses ensure that they are ready for the challenges it will bring? I'm very much looking forward to Stafford's views on this topic. Our social media campaign is #ThinkBigPSG. The series is free, it's shareable, and it's open to anyone interested, whether you're a PSG client or not. I'll now hand over to Bruce.
Richard, thank you very much indeed. Stafford, welcome. Nice to see you. I found this piece. Somebody posted it online. It's from 1963. And it says, "You'll be able to carry your phone in your pocket in the future." That was 1963. This is the future. We can carry phones in our pockets, and thank goodness we can. But it's not just about the phones. Imagine had this COVID crisis hit us in the era of the Nokia 6110, or even the 6310, or any other analog phone that came before us. Imagine how much trouble we would have been in.
No, absolutely. I think you can look at it from that perspective, from a consumer's perspective. How would we have communicated? How would we have disseminated information? Would work from home been as possible as it is today? Imagine the societal fabric breakdown, because we would have all just been sitting in our domiciles, and there would be no way, maybe letters, maybe text messages at best. It would have been quite interesting to have experienced it in that domain. But if you contrast with where we are today, and I think this is one of the key factors around what the pandemic has done, it is massively accelerated the maturity of the edge network, right? So what's happening in people's homes today, those that can afford it, corporations and what they're investing in their people to enable them to connect, the infrastructure that's been put in, what they've done. I'll give you a statistic. 55% of all the people, according to Okta, this is an Okta study, they took a look at the 5 top economies in Europe. When the pandemic hit and they went into the first stages of their lockdowns, 55% of the people that worked in France, Germany, England, those top economies, 55% of them had never worked from home. They never had a laptop, they didn't have an internet connection. And what's happened since then is a hyper acceleration, that these people are now suddenly got these big fat bandwidths to do these types of calls, to do Zooms. They're utilizing the devices in new ways. Everyone has upgraded. We've seen a PC boom again. So it's quite fascinating to see how the maturity of the edge of the network, the last mile, is accelerated. And so we have all of this infrastructure now. And I think that's going to be quite interesting, because that's going to have a tectonic impact on a global scale.
I was chatting to Annette Ahern a while back, and she, of course, is with the PSG group. And Annette was saying on the day of lockdown, I think Cosmopolitan or one of the magazines had a special on SIM cards, and Rain was giving away SIM cards. And she sent people out to go and buy every single magazine they could to get hold of the free SIM cards, because suddenly SIM cards were as rare as wine in the lockdown. I mean, it was
Oh yeah.
really, really terrifying. People needed their connectivity.
Absolutely. And if you take a look, so let's just extract ourselves away from that and kind of go up to that 80,000 foot view. So what's happened in your home, let's just assume that's happening en masse in the workforce in the world. When I look at technology and its impact, I always look at it at an 80,000 foot level, and I get fascinated with it at like a 6 foot level. But when you really want to understand technology, you've got to look at those big shifts. Like, what are those tectonic, what's the stuff that changes the flow, the current in the water? You know, in 2007, things happened that was tectonic, but it was silent, but it dictated what we did since then. You know, Steve Jobs got on a stage in 2007 and he showed us the iPhone for the first time. You know, and that wasn't just a device. What he was showing was a new way to do business. What I mean by that is, it was the first time that we saw a business show a beautiful service that could be augmented, extended by us, the application store. And that co-creative way of offering a service en masse at that scale was quite tectonic, although we were just fascinated with the device. The second thing that happened in 2007 is more people lived in cities than in any other specific geographical location. So we all coagulated from a proximity perspective around massive cities, right? So more than 50+% of the human population lived there. And the third thing is the workforce, suddenly there was 50+% of millennials in it. If you take a look at the technology move, you take a look at the urbanization, the human move, and then you take a look at what was happening with us on the millennial class, and you combine that, and I think that pretty much dictated everything that you've seen that's fascinated you right now over the last 2 decades and where we are today. I think 2020 was a moment in time like that too. I think 3 big things happened there. I think this edge network maturing, the way you've just described. This rush to mature, it was the big one. The second one was the pandemic, this work from home. It's changed human behavior. The way we now operate our lives on a daily basis, our expectations, our focus on our wellness has changed. And I think the third thing is, you know, mass digitization. You know, suddenly everyone is online. People that would have never put a credit card number into a website for the next decade are suddenly doing it right now. And I think those 3 things are going to dictate how the next 20 years look. And it's going to be tectonic.
I don't know. I mean, you're probably one of the few people who, when Steve Jobs stood up on that stage and waved the iPhone about, saw some of its possibilities. I don't even think you could have seen all of its possibilities and all of its magnificence and the power of the application and how it has fundamentally changed the world. It's become normal now, and we forget what it was like before. Anybody with small kids, you've got small kids, they don't know a world before the internet. They don't know the world before iPhones. They don't know the world before applications. So as we look at these tectonic shifts in 2020, do we actually fully appreciate how enormous this shift is in human history?
I don't think so. And I tell you, you know, what we do, we tend to do 2 things as humans. We tend to, from a technological perspective, you know, Amara's law. In the short term, we always overestimate the impact. But in the long term, we always underestimate the impact. You know, in the 1999s, the early 2000s, web van, we thought technology was going to save the day, and then suddenly it completely crashed on us. We overestimated its impact. What we didn't see on the long tail, what would happen was this global impact, what it's had. So, and we're doing it again right now. I think we're thinking about these new technologies that have come along. So from a technological perspective, new technologies have emerged over the last 18 months into the mainstream. Things like crypto, things like artificial intelligence, things like Internet of Things, you know, devices maturing at the edge. And so when you look at technology, though, it has leanings. You know, we couldn't have predicted the iPhone, but we could have predicted a smartphone. You know, we could have predicted the internet, but we couldn't have predicted Google or Amazon, because technology has leanings. It's got attributes. It's made up of ones and zeros. There's physics associated with it. So I can tell you that the raindrop that flows down the valley, I can tell you the trajectory of the raindrop is downward. Where the raindrop will land, I can't tell you that exactly. So when you look at technology, you almost have to take a big step back and take a look at the humanity aspect of it. And I think that's what leadership has to do today. And I would encourage leaders out there to be the optimists. You know, we still look at things If you were optimistic about technology, from the late 1990s, where would you have been today? If you were optimistic about Google, etc. And remember when Facebook IPO'd, we were like so pessimistic, and even the algorithm didn't understand how to process this, and the stock collapsed. And then finally, when we figured things out, the optimists always seem to come out in the end with technology. Crypto, people laugh at it. Bitcoin, they no, I'm not going to touch that thing. Be the optimist. Because the optimist from a leadership perspective, because of technology's transversality now, that's the key thing. It's that transversality aspect of it.
What's the difference between being an optimist and being a sucker for a good story? Because when we talk about optimists and the clever people who focused on the winning technologies of the past, we go, geez, these guys were geniuses. We never look at the suckers who went into, I don't know, what are failed technologies of the past. The BlackBerry. I mean, BlackBerry was the smartphone of its day. If you bet on BlackBerry, you were dead. If you bet on so many of these great ideas that are either ahead of their time or simply misplaced or whatever the case is, you were a sucker and you got punched in the face. And I wonder just how circumspect one has to be when embracing new technologies.
And that's why I think it's who do you have in the room? And I almost want to bring it from a technological aspect of things to a human aspect again. And I always say this, as much as it is about technology, it's more so about humanity. And when you talk about diversity, as a leader, as an executive, as a board, in the populace amongst your employees, in your customer base, who you're addressing, is diversity truly being personified? Because to understand where things are going is not to hollow in on one particular thing, it's to have that diverse portfolio of views in the room that give you different aspects of it. And I think technology requires that right now. We tend to celebrate the engineers and the technologists today. And I think that's a dangerous thing, because you can build very bad fitness functions into your technology, and you'll end up like Mark Zuckerberg, where he's got a great platform, he's got all of this, but it's a dystopia, that personification of a certain dystopia. And I think what we need in the room are more people that understand the humanities. We need the diversity to really navigate this way. And it's not about making one call, it's about making, spreading your bets, understanding from an innovations perspective as a business. It's not going to be about jumping on one particular thing and saying, hey, we're going down this crypto route and this is what we're doing in Bitcoin. And no, you've got to really take a step back and ensure you've got the right people in the room, the right skills in the room, the right opinions in the room. So when you're going down the path, you've spread, you've diversified with the diversity that's backing you. And I think that's the trick. That's the trick. But the key thing to understanding where technology goes is not understanding the technology itself. So to give an example, I do this at business school sometimes when I lecture. I ask the question, what killed Kodak? So people always opine and say, well, it was this piece of technology, or it was this, or it's that. But I have a different take. I think what killed Kodak was humanity. Kodak focused so much. They had a patent arsenal that matched IBM's. They had the best optical PhDs in the world working for them. They had a great distribution network. They had a camera that was yellow that could go deep underwater and flash brighter than any other camera. The excellence was there. They focused so much on organic excellence. What they forgot was what was happening with humanity being augmented with these tools that allowed them to capture images. And they laughed at that. They said, well, look at Bruce, his phone's a dumb phone. It's not even a megapixel. It's grainy. But what they forgot was the consequence of that augmentation. They were pessimists, well, they should have been optimists. And the optimists would have seen that when Bruce takes a picture, it wasn't the fact that Bruce is taking the picture, the quality, it was the fact that Bruce could share this picture on a social media platform and someone could click the like button. Because when you click the like button on Bruce's photo, it's not about the photo, it's not about the method of how I did it. It's the fact that I have spoken to your humanity. When I click on the like button, you feel good. When I retweet your tweet, you feel part of something. And I think at the base construct, because of technology, this human expression has come to the fore. People want three things. Bruce, what do you want every day? I'll tell you the three things, right? And that's a substrate to all humanity. So number one is when you wake up in the morning, you want attribution. You want recognition. You want to be recognized for something. The second thing that you want is you want to feel a part of something. And that's community. And the third thing is you want a legacy. That's the three instinctive aspects to who you are. You are no different from the man that walked into a cave to clay in his mouth, put his hand on the wall and spat, right? The difference is the cave wall is not a digital wall. But we all have this innate need to take the tools to express our humanity. And what killed Kodak was humanity. It wasn't a piece of technology. They forgot that aspect in their strategy. They ignored us. And when you do that today in a hyper-accelerated digital world, it's a terminal path.
Every generation is faced with sea changes of technology, sea changes in thinking, sea changes in attitudes, in behaviors, every generation. And that's why we have a generation gap. And that's why humanity progresses, because people learn and build and augment on the generation that came before. There are a lot of people who are watching us here today who are going, I'm terrified of this future. I've just come to terms with the fact that I have a laptop and I am now doing internet banking, and maybe one day I'll use the app on my phone to do banking, but it doesn't print me off a receipt, so that freaks me out. I'm a little bit worried about putting my details into to buy my groceries at my local retailer, but they deliver, so I'm happy with that. But I'm scared of this digital future, and for many financial advisors and for many of their customers, they're saying the future of advice, robo-advice, is the most terrifying thing they've ever faced, because that takes humanity away, and it takes my interaction with my advisor away. Hold on a second, I don't want that future. I look at that future and I say to myself, hold on a second, but surely, back to your point, this is where humanity matters more than ever before.
And I think what you describe is the knee-jerk that we see out there. I think people take a look at technology in this negative light, or a fear factor kicks in. And I think we shouldn't. I think human-machine symbiosis is the greatest gift that mankind has ever been given. I think artificial intelligence and the tool sets associated with it, in of itself as a tool, is not as powerful as when you take humanity and augment it with it. A human and a machine coming together, the derivative is exponential. It's a superpower. Now, I always say things like artificial intelligence and these tools out there, they are superpowers, but their kryptonite is inequality. And that will come down to how we program these tool sets. As a leader today, you can take the old fitness function that Milton Friedman gave us in the early 1970s that said the sole responsibility of a shareholder, of a business, is to derive value for its shareholders. Right? That was the Milton Friedman fitness function. And on the day, that was sound, that was profound, that was clear. But what he couldn't imagine was us having these superpowers where leadership can now do more with less humans. And we almost, our entire economies in the world, the maps that we've drawn for them, the framework within which we make our decisions, the context within which we lead. I love that saying, we believe in the divine right of capital today, just like we believed in the divine right of kings, right? And we that's the fitness function with which, but it doesn't have to be that way. The doing more with less is so much less sustainable than doing more of what was previously impossible, with humanity augmented with these superpowers. So we should fear a dystopia is absolutely possible. But should a dystopia occur, it will not be because of technology or artificial intelligence. It will be because of a lack of imagination on behalf of leadership to see and bring forth services that we couldn't even. I mean, when we put ATM into banking, everyone thought the tellers. What are we going to do with the tellers? The people. What are we going to do with them, right? And what we actually discovered that we didn't lay off all the tellers. When we put the ATMs into banking, we actually repurposed those human beings. We put them in front of a computer and we gave them access to a mainframe when we augmented them. And suddenly the portfolio of financial services that banks started servicing us with was better and more. And there was more work to be done, although that job was eradicated. But there was no dignity in that job. Putting wads of paper through 3 glass panes is not a job of dignity. Yes, it's an income, but that's not the work that humanity is built for. So we are going through a transition right now, I believe, where what we call jobs, what we deem valuable, is being reimagined. It's being repurposed. And I think it's going to establish more work, not less jobs in certain domains, but more work overall for humanity. On the aggregate, we're moving in a positive direction.
I talked to a lot of CEOs and I asked them about the future. And without fail, they all, particularly in financial services, want everybody back at the office every single day for more hours, if possible, to do more of what they used to do. Are they missing a trick?
Yeah, they are. I think that working from home. So coming back to those 3 major tectonic things. Let's just go back. The technology that's happened in the last 18 months, the mass digitization, and then you take a look at this work from home phenomenon, right? People's behavior, changing people's behaviors are very difficult, and people's behaviors have changed. There's a new routine in their lives, the amount of time they spend with their children, the flexibility that they now have. They've never worked harder, but they love kind of what they're doing. I think you've really got to be careful as a CEO that we can't just go back to normal again. I think what we need to think very carefully of is our cultures in our businesses. What do we want our businesses to be? Because the tool sets that we've enabled all our workforce to utilize gives them the ability to do more than they were previously capable of doing. And I do think you need to almost take a step back and realize that you need to segment your populace. You know, the 20-year-olds in your business are going to want to come back to the office for sure. You know, they are interested in procreating. They are interested in networking. They want to build up their networks. There's an interest there. So you've got to look at it from an age demographic perspective and realize that demographic, they're going to need proximity. Proximity is a key thing for them. If you go to the mid-30s, it's more of a hybrid model. I want to see you now and again, but not as much. I'm okay, right? I can utilize the tools there. When you get to like the 40s and above, those folks have established networks, established wealth, established X, Y, and Z. And those folks probably want to work from home permanently.
Okay, pause there for a moment, Stafford. Does age matter when it comes to where we are positioning the workplace? Does age matter?
Absolutely. I think age right now, because of working from home, matters more than ever before. I think it's you almost have to look through the lens to ensure that the business that you are going to build from here on in, physically, from a structural perspective, relative to your real estate, you really got to think about that. You know, like the 20-year-olds out there want to network. They've got a network to build. They want to, you know, they want to procreate. They have a sexual drive. They want to meet their partner. They want to meet their mate. And I think that's absolutely key. So if you're looking for talent in that age demographic, you've got to really think about how do you harness that, and what technological tools do you put in place, and how do you provide facilities relative to that for that to occur. Then you move to your late 30s folks, and I think those folks probably want a hybrid model. They've got kids, families. They've now been in the pandemic at home. Their kids have been accustomed to seeing them every day. They're picking them up from school. There's a general rhythm that's been established. They're working out in the morning. They're working online. They're seeing their children, etc. And to break that right now is quite traumatic. And I don't think so. We need to think about how do we provide a hybrid workplace and work mechanisms and substrates for that. Then you move to your 40-plus-year-olds, and I think those folks are well established. They've got their networks, their Rolodexes are thick. Those folks are very happy sitting at home, doing things predominantly through Zoom, going to the golf course every now and again, and they have a positive impact. So I do think you need to think about these things very carefully from an age perspective. And then I think you need to look at it from a personality perspective. Now, what we're getting onto here is this deep, rich technological impact has allowed people to work in these new ways. And what does it make us as leaderships have to focus on? It's humanity. It's understanding age. It's understanding personality. You know, when I had WeWork and when I was at WeWork and we went into lockdown early last year, when everyone was working at home, I identified that one of the people on my team was the joker, the socialite. And what I did was I grabbed him and I made sure that I gave him a platform to engage, and he did online bridge games, 30 seconds via Zoom. He came up, and this identify people like that in your business and make sure that you give them a platform, because they can create a new cohesion. They can establish an added dimension to your culture. So again, as leaders, we need the burden on our shoulders is so big now because of this technological impact, not the pandemic, because of the technological impact, to understand our workforce as much as we need to understand our customers like never before.
Culture is absolutely central to everything. I mean, when you look at a workplace, you've got a few grey heads, you've got a few greying hairs, you've got a lot of people losing their hair, fine heads of hair, and people who are still creating hairstyles.
Right.
You need to have multiple levels in an organization. People need to be reacting and interacting with each other. The older people are learning from the younger individuals within the business about new technologies and new ways of thinking and new ways of doing and understanding their markets. The young guys are learning from the wisdom of experience. And if you have this dislocation in the workforce where people are saying, hold on a second, but I don't want to come and spend time with those annoying faced individuals. Actually, I've been looking for an excuse to get away from for a decade. This work from home suits me fine. This suggests a massive break in the way in which work has been happening up until now?
Absolutely. I think it's a break in how leadership used to operate and how leadership now has to operate. I think leadership really needs to be in tune with its workforce now. I mean, there's a great deal more work and introspection and keeping your finger on the pulse, excuse the pun, perspective relative to your workforce. I think that's absolutely key. I think it's critical for you as an employee to think about your place in that culture, and how do you present value, and how do you engage, and how do you participate in the business, and how we learn now. The notion that we need to be within proximity to learn from each other. Yeah, there's an element of that, but I do think learning and relearning is such a heavy burden on the employees out there now. Because think for yourself, if you can be remotely engaged and your service to the business can be remotely accessed, well, then we could get it from Mumbai. We could get it from any third world country in the world. So you've got to really think about your participation in the business and the value that you add on an employee basis. So this notion that we're just going to go home and I can do whatever I want and I can just live in my domain. Yeah, you may do that, but the future of you and that business may not be long term. And so it works from a leadership perspective down to a kind of a worker bee perspective. We really got to reimagine, relearn, reapply value adds. But this is the new way of working. Now, there are books of people that have thought about rework. There's a book called Rework. There's a big book called Remote. And those books speak to how do you create a remote work culture? How do you engage? And it's totally possible today. But again, it takes leadership.
But these books that you're talking about are 5, 6, 7 years old. These people have been thinking about this for an awfully long time, and we would probably have got there in 10 or 15 years. What we've been gifted is an opportunity to accelerate change. Would you agree it's a gift?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think the accelerate, I mean, I was forecasting what's happening, what I see happening around me, with my kids, my family. When I go into boardrooms today and I listen to what CEOs are doing and I listen to CIOs and the infrastructure that they are putting in place, that infrastructure, it's a gift and it's an acceleration. You're absolutely right. The next 10 to 15 years have literally been just contracted in the last 18 months. And I think what businesses need to realize is infrastructure that they put in place is an opportunity. If you can service your employees in this remote manner and provide them services securely, that infrastructure that you've invested in, the security layers that you've put in, the additional CPUs, the way you've moved to the cloud, all these technologies the layer, the architecture of your information technology in your business, if it can service your employees from the outside, it is an opportunity for you to reimagine those very services being consumed by people on the outside of your business that are not employees. And that's the key thing, right? So what has been hyper accelerated is when we were in the Industrial Revolution, the size mattered. The height of the thing in the skyscraper with the big neon light is where everyone that came out of university desired to go work to get to the top floor with the view. Size mattered. And then we moved from that and we said, wait, more cultural aspect, the information worker. And then we moved from information to knowledge worker. Then we moved from knowledge worker to having a collaborative culture where we listen to our customers and we listen to our staff. We've now hyper accelerated in the domain of co-creativity. It's not just listening, it's co-creation. It's extracting latent human potential and capital on the outside of your business and cascading that into your business to make your business better. And if your employees can do that from the outside, with the infrastructure that you put in place, that's the very same infrastructure that you can enable to do this.
And what we're not focusing on, and what we do need to focus on, is how our customers have changed. Because we thought we knew our customers, we thought we knew our markets, we thought they knew us and understood us. We've changed. Our people internally have changed, but our customer set has altered dramatically as well, because they've gone through all of the stuff themselves too.
Oh, absolutely. And coming back to the point, our customers now have superpowers. Right? People have now invested not just in infrastructure, but the glowing rectangles in their hands have access to disparate species of cognition that is artificial. Right? So let me just segue into AI here for a second. My view on artificial intelligence is not that we have a big machine in the sky that can play a game against Kasparov and beat him, with its GPUs. It's not Watson in the corner over there that can disseminate the X-rays better than any radiologist, right? and we say that's AI. That is an AI. The true sense of artificial intelligence is what is happening to our customer base outside our businesses, not the investment of GPUs inside our clouds. It is Bruce out there walking around, now suddenly augmented with a device that gives him access to disparate species of artificial intelligences. AI is plural. And that is unlocking latent human potential on the outside of your businesses. And we're moving from businesses that had AI internally to businesses that understand that AI is plural. So to give you an example of businesses that have AI internally, Google, Apple, Microsoft, Facebook, those top 5 businesses that in net asset value outstrip the entire S&P 500, they are platform businesses. They've got incredible technological platforms that we engage in. But if you take a look at who they are, they derive less value than they create. Let me explain this for a second, Bruce. Apple derives less value than it creates. If you take a look at the net asset value of all the businesses in the application store and compare it to Apple, it outstrips Apple. If you take a look at all the stuff that we put on the internet and our net asset value, it outstrips Google. If you take a look at all the businesses inside of Amazon's AWS, it outstrips the value of Amazon. These are businesses that are platforms that have employed artificial intelligence power to establish value for others less than they get from the network. They're not extractive businesses. They're co-creative businesses. But there's now a new dispensation. And this is now, where do we move from Google and Apple? Where do we go to next? I call it algorithmic marketplaces. This is where businesses are starting to realize it's not me investing in only GPUs at the back here of my firewall. But wait a minute, the Bruces out there in the world are eager. There's latent human potential outside my business because of this hyper acceleration now. We've got all of this technology, all of this power, all of this capability. That's the biggest opportunity on the planet right now. And if you're in a leadership position today, and it's not about employees, it's about latent human capital to co-creatively cascade into your business to make your business better with the architecture that you're putting, not the techie thing. This is an AI thing.
How many boardrooms have you been thrown out of because you scared the living daylights out of an exco or out of a board?
I find that every time I engage, I get offered to be on the board. And I think this is another thing. I think we need, from a diversity perspective, you need people like myself on your board to truly understand when your CIO is saying something, are we translating that? Do we understand the opportunities here? And unfortunately, the other boards out there are made of, let's just call them, they're not digital natives, right? These are digital immigrants. These are folks that understand how to mitigate risk. These are people that are taught to look at things in a very let's make sure we don't do that. Whereas the domain that we live in right now is it's uncharted, it's unknown, and you got to innovate. And innovation has inherently, in of itself, science is failure. It's consistent, persistent failure. And you keep learning and learning. And businesses have to adopt this new culture. And how do you do this? How do you just let people in and let them take a look at your APIs and they build applications that consume your APIs and their businesses become better because of your infrastructure? How does that even work? I mean, that's how you got to look at, there's some best practices. Amazon with AWS, with Jeff Bezos did this. I mean, if you take a look at some of the Amazon books out there, it's quite profound. Where he's looking, he said, well, wait a minute, I've got infrastructure. Let's share this infrastructure. Let's open it up. And if I take a look at businesses out there today, you've got so much real estate, banks, you've got buildings. Those assets are places where you can empower. Your corporate social investment could hyper accelerate now. You could enable startups that's congruent to your business that utilize your services to move into your real estate because your employees are not there, and let them operate, let them build, own equity in that. And you can build a whole new diversified portfolio of things. So it is a challenge out there. People are scared, but you have to be the optimist and you've got to have a tolerance for failure.
Now, a lot of people are going to be absolutely petrified because they're feeling like you're saying, take the old playbook, throw it away, shred it, and then take the shred of paper and burn it, and then throw the ash into the wind and never look at it again.
Absolutely not.
So, I mean, this isn't Cortez and burning the ships stuff. This is an evolutionary journey that we need to go on.
Yes, it is an evolutionary journey, but it is a journey that is faster than the norm. And to attract the proper talent, talent attraction, coming back again to that humanity aspect of it, making sure you got the right people on the team, doing the right stuff. And, everything, what I got taught at Google I'll bring some Google principles and some things that I got taught when I was at Google. Google had this notion of focus on the user and all else will follow. Google Ads, if you can Google it, Google's 10 things. And one of the 10 things, the predominant one, was focus on the user and all else will follow. So like, how do you personify that? How do you kind of enable that? I'll never forget, I was involved in projects inside of Google where we would go and present to Larry and Sergey. And we would tell them, this is the market opportunity is X billion. And if we did this, Y billion. And they'd look at that and they just said, I don't understand what this does for the user. And if you couldn't translate it to that, they just wouldn't do it. And what did that mean? They were looking for 5 things, and I deciphered this. If your presentation or your business proposal, your invention drove these 5 things, they would do it. Number 1, and these 5 things are what are now hyper applicable. Here's how you focus on the user and all else will follow. Number 1 is whatever you want to do, is it making things simpler? Simplicity. Number 2 is it making it faster? Speed. Number 3 is, does it increase relevance? Right? Number 4 is, can you do the first 3 verbosely? Does it increment verbosity? And can you do it with agility? And on a board level, on a leadership level, that's how innovation comes to bear. It's not just wild maverick. It's measured innovation. It's innovation that has principles associated with it, that looks at simplicity, that looks at speed, that looks at relevance, verbosity, agility, and then derives from that impact. So no, it's not about walking in the boardroom and saying, hey, I've got an AI tool and let's go for it. We've got to ask ourselves, relative to what we want to do impactfully as a business, do we want to do that? And then the second thing, Bruce, is how you hire. Everything that we're talking about right now, businesses are struggling right now that haven't hired properly. If you have the wrong people in your workforce that you need to manage and you need to see in their chairs coming in at 8 and leaving at 5, unfortunately, because of this hyper acceleration and work from home, you're in a problem right now. That's a problem. And so how do you move forward from here? Well, what I learned at Google is how to identify incredible talent that when you hired them, you didn't have to manage them. So how do you do this? And I learned this. And after 6 months, I was like, oh, wait, so this is how we do it. And at a director level in that business, we got taught, this is how you do it. Your recruitment office looks at Bruce and says, hey, Bruce, A-level student, Stanford, great, tick box. That's all the recruitment office looks at. But when it comes to the business and the leaders that's going to interview you thereafter, they don't look at your academic credentials. You know what they look at? So Bruce walks in and Bruce says, I'm a scuba diver. I'm a microlight flyer, and I'm a snow skier. And we go, okay, Bruce, tell us more about that. Yeah, I did my night rating, I fly, I did my PPL, I got my MPL, blah, 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 blah. If you said nothing more than that, a big red cross, I put through that. If you said you were a snow skier and you know, these disciplines and you've done it X amount of times and boom, you just kept on and that's all you said, I put another cross to that. If you say you're a scuba diver and you could only talk about being a DM and all, I put a cross. What we were looking for was the Bruces that would come in and say, I'm a scuba diver and I've been doing it for X amount of years. I grew up in El Dorado Park and there are now 3 kids that I'm putting through scuba diving classes and I'm exposing, and I do lectures at the school about scuba diving because I believe so much in it, and I'm helping these 3 kids and I've raised some capital and from some friends and we're going to do it. I'm looking for the guy that says I'm a pilot. And you know what? I believe I can uplift. If you show excellence, leadership, sharing, and love in your personal capacity, you don't have to be managed. When you hire someone like that and they come into your business, you give them a broad direction and just watch them execute. And that's where we did at Google. We did the 80-20 rule. 80% of the time, that's when I was still there. 2006, Google was still small. The 80-20 rule, 80% of the time, you do the KPI, general direction of the business. 20% of the time, you do whatever the hell you want and you could expense it. Right? So every Friday, I'd go off and I'd go do my microlight pilots, upgrading license things. I do, and they pay for that. But you know, in 20% time, that's when Gmail was born. That's when certain services get born, because true invention and innovation doesn't exist amongst entrepreneurs and business people. It exists when people are having fun. And that's what we got to establish now.
And if we go full circle then, the risk of South African managers going, well, that's very nice, Stafford, but this is South Africa. We're a bit slow here. We like what Marissa Mayer did when she came to Yahoo. She took control. She made everybody, because Yahoo had this wonderful work from home culture long before anybody else did. And she just went, no, I don't think so. I'm going to shake this tree. My costs are too high. I will get rid of the old.
How did that end for her? How did that end for her?
Not particularly well. But here's the risk, because actually what you're proposing is crazy and hard and different. And I just want to go back to a comfort zone, and yeah, we'll get there eventually, Stafford. I mean, you've accelerated it. Sure, we'll get there in 10 rather than 15 years. So yeah, don't bother us now. We'll call you. Don't call us. We're going back to, our people need to be comfortable. We need to make sure that they're happy. Because if we disrupt them more now, I mean, the stress, they're going to burn out. It's going to be awful. And I worry that we're headed that way rather than in your direction.
That is a worry, but that's such an opportunity for someone like myself, right? The folks that are investing as an angel investor in startups right now. To be an entrepreneur right now, it's never been easier because it's clear that businesses are very distracted, very worried. And all the flaws relative to their culture, all the flaws relative to their middle management, all the flaws relative to how they're hired in the past are all elements that they seriously have to consider right now. So if you as a leader thinking there, well, this is maverick and this is like, I've got to go back to meat and potatoes. My team have to come back in. That's okay. But you know what? I'm probably going to hire your best person. I'm probably going to hire them. I'm probably going to take them from you. Your best programmer, your best HR person, your best logistics person, your best operations officer are probably going to want to work for me. And right now, there's a lot of me's walking around. And I think that's what businesses really have to do. So you have to, if there's one single responsibility that leaders have today, is to reimagine. If you are not sitting every day and spending at least 20 to 30% of your day reimagining your business in a tangible way, not in a dreamy way, in a very tangible, structured way, you're in danger. So your competition is not the institution across the road or the industry within which you are. I think now it's yourself. I think you've got to look inward right now. I think your sustainability will derive from how you reimagine your services, your products, your customers, and you kind of think about what do you want your customers to become. It's such a different way of, there's a book called What Do You Want Your Customers to Become? It's more relevant now than it's ever been because your customers do have these tool sets right now. You do have all these latent. So what principles? If I had to give some advice and say, what should you go and do? What are the 3 laws of where we are right now? I think number 1 is ask yourself, does your business derive less value than it creates? Are you a co-creative business? Are you an extractive business? Or are you an enabler on the aggregate of more than what you derive as a net? That is a question that a lot of business leaders need to think about on a board level. Do we have a business that's extractive? Are we a Milton Friedman, business, or are we a co-creative business that has a societal impact? So are you deriving less value than you create? Number 1. Number 2 is everything that you make, you've got to make hackable. Everything. Extensible, human augmentable. You need to make services that people on the outside of your business can consume in a secure way to add value to whatever purpose and function that they want to attain from that. And the third thing is the entire strategy has to be based on the notion of understanding humanity, because as much as it is about technology today, it's more so about humanity. It's not understanding the tech. And that's what a lot of leaderships do. They try to bring the CIO onto the board, or they try to bring a technologist onto the board. No. What you need to understand is the consequence of its impact. You know, it was what was amazing about electricity wasn't that when we discovered electricity, the true impact of electricity was kind of 40, 50 years later. There's a book called Empires of Light. A lady did a dissertation from MIT on it. And she looked and studied when Tesla and all these guys were messing with electricity, what actually happened, right? The first people that monetized electricity were people with nose rings and tattoos at the county fair, where you went in the tent behind the tent, you paid a penny and you went and your hands went around Tesla's arc and you walked out there and your hair stayed up and it was magical and you're like, oh my word, this is amazing. That's what the second monetization of electricity was when people stepped with the lights on in downtown Manhattan because it was a fashion symbol, right? The way it was made was smoky, ugly, horrible, but it was a fashion symbol. When Bruce walks around with his iPhone right now, he doesn't really know what to do with it, but it's pretty, it's amazing, it's beautiful, right? And that's where we are, kind of where we're at. And then something happened to electricity. It disappeared. It went away. Was taken out of our homes in terms of being manufactured or delivered, and it got put onto an electrical cloud. And we figured out how to convey it over vast distances. We created standards to tether to it, AC/DC. You know, and then we created a per minute utilization. And then we had the industrial revolution impact because of electrification. We are there again today. The internet is not about understanding the bits and the bytes underneath it. The internet is disappearing. When you got lost, you used to take a map book out of the car. Then we gave you Google Maps and Garmin and TomTom, beautiful renders. Now you've got geo everywhere. What's the next step of geo? It's the autonomous driving vehicle. It's when you get in the car and you say, take me to Taco Bell. And the blind guy gets taken to the Taco Bell drive-through, comes back with a taco in his hand, sitting in his EV, and all he did was ask for the outcome. Technology dissipates. When you talk to Amazon Echo in your house, Google Home, we do Google Home at our dinner table. When we have discussions, we have a little device sitting on the table. It's listening, fine, but we ask it, is this true? We don't open up a phone to open up an app to access the internet. The internet is just there. The interface for the internet is sensory now. It is not an application. It's not a phone. This is the world within which we are moving. This is massive opportunities.
And this is the power. I mean, this is the huge power that comes into the hands of individuals. It comes into the hands of companies and corporations, of leaders within companies. No wonder governments are scared. Governments are no longer in control. They think they are in some cases, but less and less so around the world. And I mean, from a humanity perspective, I think we should all be very excited. The fact that we're getting further and further away from centralized control, and but part of that will also freak some people out. Paint me a picture of the future. Paint me a picture of 2050. What does the world look like?
I think if you had to ask me, I think a dystopia is absolutely possible. It is possible. But I think of a future where humanity's true purpose is unearthed. And our true purpose is not to be toiling the soil. Our true purpose is not to weave the clothes. The Luddites and the Luddite revolution, right? They were the makers of fabric and the weavers of thread. What they couldn't imagine was fashion and runways, things that have no KPI associated specifically, right? In the fields with our oxen and our plows, we couldn't imagine recipes, and our food would become this abstract about recipes and hors d'oeuvres and Michelin chefs. And today, what lays latent is this future where humanity is not, in principle, from a metaphorical perspective, toiling, with our machines to deliver work and to produce productivity. I think our purpose as humanity is to do things that waste time. Anything that can be measured as an output with efficiency and productivity is terminal. In 2050, the world will be made up of work that expresses humanity in a way that is not about blood, sweat, and tears and toil. It will be about creative expression, because that's what we are actually built to do. And if I look at the workforce today, I'll never forget a project that I was involved in Seattle in the United States a few years ago. We put an automation machine in a factory that picked and placed certain things faster than the workers on the floor. We left it there. We did not communicate with the workers. And when we came back a week later, we found our little contraption in the corner smashed to bits. We looked at the CCTV footage and we saw one of the guys came in one morning and they did their version of a toy. They took it and they were all like, whoa, go. And he took a baseball bat and he destroyed it. We sat down with that individual and said, why did you do that? And he said, well, this thing is going to take away my job. And we changed the subject and we started to understand him better. And we found out, long story short, that he was actually a human being that loved mathematics and he loved to play a particular Spanish musical instrument. And that's what he wants to do with his life. And that's why he was doing this job that he really hates. You see, we are all subject to a fitness function today that extracts value out of humanity based upon work that we should not be doing. And the beauty of the gift that we've been given is, as much as electrification changed our lives, artificial cognification is going to do the same. In the short term, yes. Can we imagine? Could you go back to the late 1800s and tell someone about child labor being wrong? They would have gone, go away. Here's a 6, 7-year-old working 7 days a week, 14 hours a day as a chimney sweep or in the mines. We couldn't imagine. And you know what it took? It took a bunch of farmers in Iowa in the year 1909. I spoke to Professor Jonathan Jansen about this the other day. The origination of the high school movement in the United States. A bunch of farmers circled their wagons, said, this is crap. Our kids can't work this way. We're going to give them greater skills. And they created the first instantiation of a high school/school in 1909. And in less than 10 years, more than 75% of the addressable age demographic were in institutions called schools and high schools. And what happened was the kids got taken out of the fields, out of the factories, greater automation, the machines took over, and those kids started doing things that were wasting time. They were imagining new jobs and new work. So in 2050, where do I see ourselves as a humanity? I see us doing things that truly allows us to express our humanity, to do the things that we truly, truly love. And those things will have value. And there'll be mechanisms to express that value. So example today, crypto. You know, we've seen NFTs, non-fungible tokens come along. When you look at non-fungible tokens as an investor or CEO of a business, you laugh at it. But when you look at NFTs and you see someone buying a painting as an NFT for 60 million pounds, and you're like, oh my God, this is crazy. But if you take a look at it from a creator's perspective, if for a music and a musician today, you can put your music into a platform that allows you to monetize it in ways that were previously unimaginable without any institutional obligation between you and the person that wants to pay you for it. That's incredible, right? So the ability to create a poster, a record album, and say the NFT for that. Now, would everyone buy that? That's not the point. The 10,000 fans, there's going to be a Bruce Whitfield in there that will buy it for $100,000. You know, then I can create a song that's special and I can sell that to somebody as an NFT. It's now mechanisms to create value. And I think this is, so how do we get there? Here's a mythical way. And this comes to crypto and Bitcoin. Everyone talks about Bitcoin and crypto in a skeuomorphic way, right? When we created the car, the first derivation of a hydrogen, of an engine, a combustion engine, was a thing with 4 wheels with stirrups, because we rode horses. We didn't imagine a steering wheel, right? So that's kind of how we're taking crypto and Bitcoin. We skeuomorphically applying it to where we are today, and it's not applicable. You and I, Bitcoin is okay for us. We have got electronic things. We've got an electronic bank account. When I go to the township, cash rules. Stokvels and shebeens and those things have very sophisticated human architecture around the movement of cash. Bitcoin is not meant for the electronic world. It's not meant to displace cash. Bitcoin will create a third economy. We have the formal economy, the informal economy, and it's going to unlock the next economy. I call it the third economy. And that third economy will be the guy that lives 3 hours outside of Shenzhen. He has no access to financial instruments that you and I have, neither cash. And suddenly he has this tool in his hand through a glowing rectangle that enables him to access derivatives, financial instruments that were previously inaccessible. Him and the machines from an Internet of Things perspective will have the ability to exchange value in ways that we can't imagine. So the world is beautiful. The world is amazing if we approach it in a humanistic way. And what we need to be careful of right now as leaders, very, very careful, is that we don't land up like the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world. You know, if you take a look at the cartoon Fantasia, Mickey Mouse gets the wizard's book, the little wand, and he becomes super powerful, and he taps the broom and he says, go fetch me water. He gives the broom a fitness function, and then he falls asleep at the table. And the broom keeps bringing water, and then he wakes up in a vortex, right? And it's twirling, and he's trying to undo the fitness function. For me, that's a metaphor for Mark Zuckerberg today. And we need to, that's why, because we don't have enough of the humanities in the room. So those people that are studying journalism, Greek mythology, psychology, these are the people that you need to introduce into your technological domain today, because the business and services that you can build from the technological tools that you have can give us this beautiful outcome. But the only way we get to this beautiful outcome is when we truly employ diversification with this automation. And that's a human amplification. That's not a disintermediation of humanity. Amazon has hired more people, yet has employed more tools, because they're not doing more with less. They are doing more what was previously impossible. You go to New York, you pay for the power cable, and you get it within an hour at your hotel room. Previously unimaginable. Taking people off factory floors and allowing them to orchestrate these disparate species of artificial intelligences to deliver services that were previously impossible. That's the future.
Stafford, you bent our minds. Thank you very much for doing it. Richard, if you want to come out from under your desk now and wrap it all up for us. Stafford, thanks so much. Richard?
Well, thank you, Bruce and Stafford. I think Stafford probably could have carried on all day, which just shows the kind of the world we live in and how it's changing. I mean, what a great discussion, so many positives, so many areas of discussion. I wonder if it'll change Bruce's outlook on crypto. Be interested to hear from Bruce over time. I especially like the link back to humanity and understanding that technology should enhance lives at its core. I mean, 3 words Stafford mentioned in particular stood out for me. So recognition, community, and legacy. Remote work and the increase of digital technology is something most of us have experienced over the last 15 months. We all have to remember humans are front and center of this reimagining. At PSG, we balance stability, security, and consistency with agility and providing first-class solutions the way our advisors and clients really want to consume our services. Our focus is always on great human experience. And with the bombardment of everything digital, it's our goal to provide the right advice and with the right balanced outcome. That's why a skilled and trusted financial advisor can be invaluable during these uncertain times. They can provide objective insights and help you consider alternative scenarios so you can make considered, rational decisions on your wealth and insurance portfolios. Co-create, if you will. If you have an advisor, I encourage you to engage with them. And if you don't, please get in touch with us. We welcome your feedback, so please communicate with us. Be sure to register for our next exciting speaker in the Think Big series. Thank you and goodbye.